Making something exciting is hard. Making something novel is hard. Taking something that's worked for you in the past and making sure it stays a good thing is really hard. And most of the time, it doesn't work. But for a select few, it can make the difference between a real winning formula and a total bomb. I mean, that sounds obvious, doesn't it? Sure, but the realization that a show you created needs to last longer can be a real fire under you. If you're running low on ideas or having problems using new characters in new ways or using characters that you've had before in new ways, it can result in poor quality episodes or even the death of your series. So the question that I need to ask is, how do you reinvigorate life into a show and retain relevancy while also preventing yourself from falling into the same pratfalls that so many other shows stumble upon? This is William Hanna and Joseph Barbera. The two got their start working together through the 40s and 50s at MGM Studios, making the famous cat and mouse duo Tom and Jerry. The two would continue their partnership into the late 50s, when after MGM straight up just closed its animation division due to the rise of televisions in American homes. So the two creators had collaborated on the making of the aptly named Hanna-Barbera Productions. With the goal of immediately jumping into the TV animation industry, it was new ground for both of them, and they successfully pitched and produced their first show in 1957 with the Rough and Ready show, and it saw really quick success. They continued their strategy and make a whole catalog of shows throughout the years. Audiences didn't seem to care that the shows were made on a budget of a ham sandwich and moved just as fast. The dialogue and the characters were memorable, likable, and remained staples of American television for years. In 1959, Hanna-Barbera were considering the shows that they had produced over the last 2 years, specifically the Huckleberry Hound show and the Quick Draw McGraw show. These shows were doing well, but lacked a certain wide appeal, which they felt was really needed. So they took to looking to inspiration in other popular shows at the time. And since this was the late 50s, the breakout genre of television in the 50s was the situational comedy, or as we like to call it, the sitcom. The sitcom was all over the place, with shows running such as Father's Knows Best, I Married Joan, and The Honeymooners. So we have the idea for the sitcom. What can we do to make the concept novel? Well, let's set the show in a unique place. Ideas thrown around were making them hillbillies or setting the show in ancient Rome before eventually settling down into a Stone Age setting. And the Flagstones were... Wait a second. And the Flintstones were born. The Flintstones followed two neighboring families. The Flintstones with Fred and Wilma on the left here, and the Rubbles with Barney and Betty on the right. Usually, Fred and Barney would be at work or at an event or staying at home, and Fred will get an idea from whatever the topic of the day is, usually from whatever he saw on TV or whatever he saw somebody at work do. And he'll come up with an idea based on that, usually with the goal of getting them rich quick. Meanwhile, Wilma and Betty usually judge them from the sidelines. Sitcoms generally don't require a lot to keep their concept going, as it turns out, and besides, the Flintstones had the added benefit of being able to take their unique setting that mixes things people knew from the modern day and create an ancient version of it. It's the novelty that got people's attention, and that attention was dang near guaranteed because they played it in prime time, the first cartoon to do so. It wasn't just kids that were liking this, it was everyone. And that was the important game changer here. The show would continue on to be an incredible breakout success during its first 2 seasons, but when they reached the 3rd season, they began to run into some small snags. Many shows come to a point where they wonder, can we keep going on the same route we've been on? And for the Flintstones, that answer was no. So we get the episode, The Blessed Event, or The Dress Rehearsal. And this is the episode that takes us from a simple show about a Stone Age family and turns it into a generation-crossing brand that to this day is remembered fondly and still has new productions based on it. The Blessed Event begins with Fred and Barney exercising in Brick Boulder's gym together, and after he sprains a muscle, Fred asks for some rubbing alcohol from Mr. Boulder and decides to hold on to it. Afterwards, he takes a trip to the hospital where his wife Wilma is having a procedure done as she's expecting a baby soon. Wilma takes Fred's car home, and Fred is then asked by the doctor for a little blood sample. Fred resists at first, but hides under a table, and the doctor accidentally, in his haste, takes a sample of the rubbing alcohol. When Fred gets home, Wilma tells him that the baby could be coming any day now, and Fred proceeds to panic a little. He becomes overly helpful. He won't let Wilma do anything despite her protests and can't sleep, anticipating the moment that everything is ready. In order to calm his nerves down, though, Barney stops by and suggests that he and Fred do a dress rehearsal to practice what it would be like in case something really does happen. And the rehearsal goes pretty well, minus a small run-in with the police, where the officer thankfully offers a police escort to the hospital. They have a minor issue in the hospital, but then Fred and Barney go back to Fred's house feeling ready when Wilma drops the bombshell that it's time. Fred just can't control himself. He's panicking, he's forgetting to put Wilma in the car, and the worst of it all, by the time he's finally got everything in order, the police officer stops him again for speeding. Everyone finally makes it to where they need to be, and after pacing for so long that Barney offers to pace for him, a nurse steps in and tells Fred that Wilma had given birth to a little baby girl, and the new parents name her Pebbles, with her first words being her dad's classic catchphrase, "Yabba dabba doo." So this episode isn't the funniest thing ever. In fact, it's rather quaint by modern standards, with very, very plain married couple jokes and pretty basic setups and payoffs in terms of the storyline. It's fun to see Fred panic so much, but he ends up panicking for about a third of the episode's runtime, and it can drag a bit. Wilma and Betty have a fun friend chemistry, and it's enjoyable to see them act so coolly in the face of the pregnancy, but this episode isn't really memorable for its quality as an animated masterpiece. No, I wanted to talk about this episode because of this character right here, Pebbles Flintstone. Pebbles Flintstone changes so much about the Flintstone as a brand that we can pinpoint her birth as the moment the Flintstones spread to a multimedia IP. Leading up to the episode, there were 3 other episodes that were part of a story arc, which was very unusual for serialized TV at the time, even more so for a cartoon. The original plan for the story was to make them have a son, but when toy-making company Ideal got wind of it, they suggested making the child a girl so they could turn it into a doll. After the premiere of the episode, it made news. It was in magazines, it was in TV guides, and it was in newspapers. Pebbles dolls became the most sought-after toys that year. Flintstones comics featuring her as the main character made their way to store shelves. The show switched from its original sponsor of Winston cigarettes to Welch's grape juice, and the show would move in a much more kid-friendly direction, making episodes all about Pebbles and giving her a friend with the later Rubbles child named Bamm-Bamm. All of this helped extend the series' life to another 3 years, but it comes at the cost of making everything so much more kid-oriented, way less about the main family of just Fred and Wilma. But it worked. Even after the series conclusion, we had the Pebbles and Bamm-Bamm show, we had Cave Kids, and Yabba Dabba Dinosaurs, not to mention other ventures like the Flintstones movie, multiple Flintstones theme parks, and Flintstones chewable vitamins, the most popular brand of vitamins used amongst kids in the United States even today. When you gotta make something old new again, there's not many who can claim the level of success that the modern Stone Age family has. Sometimes that means taking risks, but other times it means falling back on tried and true strategies, like adding a new character for mass market appeal. Sure, it can be annoying for the viewer, but you can't deny those numbers. And the numbers say that people liked this cute baby.